taxes are the single largest bill you pay, representing more expense to you and to your family than your home, food, and utilities combined. Every time you get paid, it's like a cash register goes ka-ching down at the IRS, and they get 1/4 or more of your money. Not a bad deal for them, huh?
Welcome to Ex-IRS Agents Don't Lie. In the next few minutes, you will find out what top-level former IRS tax attorneys and revenue agents are telling us, but no one has been telling you. Until now.
We have two tax systems in this country. One is for employed people working for wages, while the other is for self-employed people. And there is one group of people in this country that gets a greater amount of deductions, more savings than any other group. No, it's not the super rich. It's the people with home-based business. They not only get all the normal business tax deductions, just like Bill Gates or Ross Perot, but they also get to write off the business use of their homes, cars, kids, healthcare, and much more that even the super rich can't deduct.
No, this is not another boring audio tape about taxes or tax bookkeeping. Whether you have a personal accountant or not, whether you know anything about taxes or nothing at all, this is an audio you do not want to miss, because this audio will probably shock you, amaze you, and for many, it will change your life forever.
Most accountants are not telling their clients to get a home business, but the fact still remains that a home business is the greatest tax reduction strategy in America today, bar none.
How would you like to cut your income taxes in half or more? Get $5,000 per year or more, courtesy of the U.S. Congress each year, and you'll never have to pay it back.
There are enough deductions for almost anyone to reach $15,000 per year in new extra tax deductions.
Well, as good as this sounds, it may surprise you to know that almost every single working American can do exactly that, starting right this second.
The most important point and best part of the system is it shows you how to be audit-proof. Now, for anyone who has ever been audited, when I say it makes you audit-proof, you should all be saying, yes!
Perhaps the only thing more amazing than being able to cut your taxes in half and instantaneously raise your income by thousands per year is how incredibly simple it is to do.
This program is approved for 8 hours of continuing education credit for financial planners in all 50 states. There is absolutely nothing in this system anyone can dispute, unless they are simply shooting off with an uninformed opinion.
Allow me to welcome our guests today, two very distinguished gentlemen, Mr. Michael Cooper and Mr. Sandy Botkin, who working together are helping working Americans by the tens of thousands save millions of dollars in income taxes each year. First of all, let me tell you a few things about our guest, Mr. Michael Cooper. He is a member of Mensa, the Genius Society, and is a much sought-after corporate executive and consultant to the direct sales and networking industry. Welcome, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, and I'd like to welcome you to Ex-IRS Agents Don't Lie. I have the pleasure of introducing our other guest, Mr. Sandy Botkin, who is one of the very top-level IRS people in the entire United States. After graduating from law school and working in the national accounting firm of Touche Ross, Mr. Botkin was politically appointed to the IRS, where he served in the office of the Chief Counsel, the top legal office of the Internal Revenue Service. He was one of 8 attorneys in the United States selected to train all attorneys in the IRS Corporate Tax Division, meaning Mr. Botkin actually trained the top IRS people. And while working at the IRS, Sandy realized that small and home business people were not getting the help and tax planning information that they should be receiving and were therefore losing literally billions of dollars of tax deductions. He is in fact widely recognized as one of, if not the, top CPA and tax attorney in this country. He's an adjunct professor of accounting and law at the University of Maryland and Columbia Union College. He's listed in the Who's Who of Business and is president of the Tax Reduction Institute. Welcome, Mr. Botkin.
Well, thank you, Mike. I can't begin to tell you how excited I am to be here. It seems like I've spent the last 5 years screaming in the wind, trying to tell everyone how simple it really is to really slash their income taxes. But with your focus on the nationwide marketing of this information through your company, we're really starting to accelerate changing a lot of lives in Middle America. And I commend you for what you're doing, and I am truly honored to be part of this team.
Well, Sandy, I appreciate that, and I can't begin to express how excited we all are to have you with us here today. But before we jump into this, after studying some of your other materials relating to your IRS experiences and such as that, I couldn't help wondering why you've referred to yourself in some of your materials, and I quote you as the top rodent. Would you share that with us?
Yeah, sure. Well, Mike, I do seminars all over the country, as well as on my radio show, and I often ask the audience how many people think of an IRS agent as some kind of rat, and about 90% of the hands go up. Then I ask many of them to think of the IRS as a sort of rodent-like organization, and of course about 100% of the hands go up on that one. Well, if the IRS is a sort of rodent-type organization, and if I was one of 8 people selected by the IRS to train all of their corporate tax attorneys, what does that make me?
Well, it's either top rodent or king rat, I guess. But Sandy, you've literally helped people save millions of dollars in taxes through your institute and the seminars. You've helped people instantaneously increase their take-home pay by hundreds of dollars per month, and in many cases, you've added an extra $5,000 or $10,000 per year to their family savings. Can you share with our listeners some help in understanding just how easy it really is to cut their income taxes in half, or in some cases, zero them out altogether?
Absolutely. But before I do, I think I'd like to point out a few things. 1, anyone can do this, and you can do it starting today. 2, you don't have to know anything about taxes. 3, this has nothing to do with your current accountant, who you may or may not be using. And 4, there is no complicated paperwork involved. If you can find an extra 2 minutes per day, I can show you how to put $5,000 or more in new deductions your first year, and every year from now on, guaranteed.
My golly, Sandy, that's a lot of money. In fact, sadly enough, that's more money than most Americans have in the bank right this second. How does this work?
Well, Mike, first you have to realize that every working American pays taxes. Most don't even know how much they pay because taxes are automatically taken out of your check. In fact, every time you get paid, it's like a cash register goes ka-ching down at the IRS, and they get 1/4 or more of your money. Not a bad deal for them, huh? You do all the work, and they get 1/4 or more. I really encourage everyone listening to pull out your paycheck stub and look at it for yourself. Look at the gross pay versus the net pay, and you'll probably be shocked. What almost everyone discovers is that their taxes are the single largest bill you pay, representing more expense to you and to your family than your home, food, and utilities combined.
You're absolutely right, Sandy. And I've told many people that if Americans had to pay their taxes like they pay their power bill, meaning they had to write out their single largest payment check every month for taxes at the end of that month, we'd probably have another Boston Tea Party style revolt in this country. But what can they do about it?
Well, you need to understand that we have 2 tax systems in this country. One is for employed people working for wages, while the other is for self-employed people. Congress passes laws saying that we have to pay taxes, but Congress also passes laws saying that we are entitled to certain kinds of deductions. And there is one group of people in this country that gets a greater amount of deductions, more savings, than any other group.
And I'll bet you most people think that's the super rich people, right?
No, it's not the super rich. It's the people with home-based business. They not only get all the normal business tax deductions, just like Bill Gates or Ross Perot, but they also get to write off the business use of their homes, cars, kids, health care, and much more that even the super rich can't deduct.
Well, Sandy, I think most people's chins might have just dropped a notch or two on that. And I know from talking to hundreds of people with you that they're shocked when they learn that they can actually cut their taxes in half and instantaneously increase their take-home pay by hundreds of dollars per month, thousands per year, just by simply opening and operating a home business with an intention to make a profit.
I think that's because most people hold the view that they can't do anything about their taxes, or if there was something they can do, their accountant would have told them about it. In fact, even at the Tax Reduction Institute, we've experienced some frustration in trying to communicate these ideas to people. Often someone's accountant, who's not really a specialist in this tax area, will say they can't do this or can't do that, but in reality, it is because that accountant is not fully up to speed on home business tax laws.
Well, you're right, Sandy. We've experienced that same thing. Some accountants have said that you have to be making a profit from a home-based business before these deductions will apply. And just as an example, last week, I was talking to a CPA in Tennessee, and she made the comment to me that she thought that home businesses couldn't deduct any more expenses than their earnings.
Mike, that's just plain ridiculous. Of course, any business can deduct all legitimate business expenses regardless of income or profit. In fact, most people know that many businesses lose money their first year or two. Those businesses would never start, and many jobs would be lost if businesses couldn't deduct their expenses or losses, in some cases for many years in a row, in the pursuit of making a profit.
Well, Sandy, it sure seems there's a lot of confusion out there, and including among many accountants and CPAs on these things.
You know, Mike, as bizarre as it may sound, that confusion is with many IRS agents themselves. No one, not even an IRS agent, has 40,000 pages of tax code memorized, and thousands more pages are added most years. People working in taxes, whether government employees or tax professionals, familiarize themselves with the laws they see or use the most. Most professionals are mostly unfamiliar with most of the tax laws passed benefiting home businesses because they couldn't make any money in that area. Most home businesses don't use a CPA like larger businesses. So most CPAs are not fully aware of the huge advantages a home business has for the person who wants to cut their taxes and increase their income with a home business. This is why, in the program we put together, we reference each deduction to the U.S. tax law, code, or IRS revenue ruling that allows that specific deduction. That way the client, accountant, CPA, or even the IRS agent can feel confident in taking or allowing the deductions we've outlined. And by the way, there is absolutely nothing in this system anyone can dispute unless they are simply shooting off with an uninformed opinion. But going back to the CPA you just referenced, she is confusing having a home business with hobby loss rules. If you are operating a hobby rather than a real business, she would be right. But if you operate a real, documented business and run it like a business with a profit motive as outlined in our tax advantage system and not as a hobby, even if you have never made a profit, you can offset any other source of income you may have. And if you're married, you can even offset your spouse's income, meaning you've just become a great tax shelter and you'll never get divorced. But seriously, the fact of the matter is no, you don't have to make a profit in order to take these deductions. And yes, anyone could start taking these deductions today if they had a home-based business.
Well, Sandy, with all the confusion in the marketplace regarding the subject of tax planning, it seems that, most people think tax planning is difficult or boring or something only the rich do, or they have the misconception that their accountant takes care of their taxes. So why do they need a system like this?
Actually, Mike, none of that is true, except for the fact that taxes can be boring at times. I think taxes are only boring for most people because 99% of everything they hear on the subject is complicated and doesn't apply to them. But the information we're talking about in this system does apply to them, and that totally changes their interest level because everything we're talking about is simple and puts money in their pockets where it belongs. When you do that, they start to sing a little song that I teach all my students and fellow tax attorneys.
Oh, what song is that now?
Everything is cheaper when you get a deduction. Cha-cha-cha.
That was great, Sandy. But what about the myth that says that your accountant takes care of your taxes?
This would be like the notion that the dentist takes care of our teeth or the mechanic takes care of our car. No, we take care of our teeth and our car, and they just work on the mess we occasionally bring to them. And the accountants are really the same way. They take what you bring to them and then do their best at getting you all the deductions you can get. But very few are going to tell you to get a home business for the deductions because, one, they don't have the time to show you nor teach you what deductions to take, and two, if you don't follow their instructions and get it wrong, who's the typical person going to blame? The accountant. Remember, accountants by nature are conservative people. There's even a doctrine in accountancy called the conservatism doctrine. The point is, regardless of the reason, most accountants are not telling their clients to get a home business. But the fact still remains that a home business is the greatest tax reduction strategy in America today, bar none.
Well, you're absolutely right, Sandy. We've heard from many people that have tried to increase their income and lifestyle by having the spouse get a job, or maybe one or both of them even have a second job. But then at the end of the year, they realize they're even further in the hole. Can you kind of explain that phenomena to us?
Mike, in the next 2 minutes, I'm going to give you a 6-month course in financial planning and give you one of the most valuable, untold secrets today. And for those of you listening, if there was only one thing you remember from this tape, make sure it's what I'm about to tell you in the next 2 minutes. Let me tell you about Jane Bryan Quinn, who's a syndicated columnist around the United States, and all the information, by the way, comes from an article in Women's Day magazine. Jane did an analysis of someone who makes $50,000 a year. Now, $50,000 is good, but it doesn't make him a millionaire, and frankly, they weren't making ends meet. So the husband told his wife, honey, you got to go out and get a second job. You got to get a job and make $15,000 a year. That's what she was making at that time. Well, at the end of the year, they found out even though she now got a job and made $15,000 more than they were making before, they ended up with the same in their bank account, maybe even less. The question is why? What's going on? Well, on the extra $15,000, she had to pay an extra $4,500 in federal and state income tax, most of which is non-deductible. Then she had to commute to work. And by going there, Jane assumed 10 miles round trip each day at the old 31 cent a mile rate, and that was an extra $1,200 a year, non-deductible. Now she had lunch of approximately $5 a day with her colleagues, 5 days a week, non-deductible. She had child care for her 3 children, and you get a little bit of child care credit, and that's about it. Basically, that was another $100 a week of non-deductible expenses. She had to get better clothing, and she had more dry cleaning that she had to spend on an estimated extra $1,000 a year, non-deductible. And now that they're both working, they're not at home cooking, they're eating out more convenience foods. Result, an extra $1,000, non-deductible. When you put all this together, on that extra $15,000 a year, they ended netting out $1,156 a year. So the conclusion is very, very vital, and this is the point I want to make. By making an extra $15,000 from a home business versus a job, that $15,000 with a home business is virtually tax-free due to the deductions. You end up making 15 times the income from the home business that you would make from the equivalent job.
This is the end of Side A. The program continues on Side B.